Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's 30-minute workout. My name is Jerry Bartels. I'll be doing most of the heavy lifting today. Joining me are my colleagues, Jeff Bartels and Dana Judge. In today's session, we're going to be looking at how you can recycle or reuse your content using a tool called Design Center. All right. If you've joined us for a 30-minute workout before, welcome back. If this is your first session with us, I'm sure you would agree that when taking a Civil 3D training session, your time is generally spent or focused specifically on what's required to do your job. When it comes to Civil 3D, there is so much more available in the application. So if those tools aren't covered in traditional training sessions, then instead they're things that you have to discover over using the application for many years. That's the purpose of these sessions, these 30-minute workouts, is to help fill in those gaps and accelerate that discovery process. As we go through these sessions, we just have a couple of ground rules. They're 30 minutes. We start on time, we end on time. Also, the examples we use are typically abstract in nature. So we'll be, laser focused on how a particular tool works. And from there, you can take the next step in how best to apply it to your particular project or situation. The sessions themselves are recorded. Anyone that has registered will receive a copy of this recording. If you have any questions along the way, please enter them in the Q&A pane. Dana and Jeff will be addressing those as we go. Likewise, if you'd like to follow up with one of us or have a question after the session, please reach out to us. We always enjoy speaking with other users. So for today, we're going to be looking at the Design Center. We're going to cover the interface. We're going to talk about how to navigate and mine for content. We'll look at ways we can search. Because this tool, if you go back and look at the description from this session, the tool was actually implemented more than 20 years ago. So in some respects, it can be a little quirky, but we can actually take a look or take advantage of some of those quirks, take those to our advantage. Also has a couple of limitations we'll touch on as well. And if we've got time, we'll go ahead and do some bonus content. So all of our sessions are, we like to say, are a PowerPoint free zone. We go into the application. We like to do as much live in front of you so that you can see actually how the tool works and less about being PowerPointed to death. So with that, let me share my screen. Make sure you can see my my Civil 3D up on the screen. Jeff and Dana, if you could just confirm that's there, we'll go ahead and keep going.
Yes, sure. It is.
All right. Fantastic. So I'm in Civil 3D 2021. That being said, everything that I'm going to show today will be applicable for a number of prior releases as well. Nothing that I'm going to do is going to be specific to this particular release. I'm in a drawing right now that's called Demo. I don't have a lot in this, this file to start with. Want to take a look at just a couple things that are in here. I've got some layers, just a handful of those. I've got one layout, which is basically empty at this point. If I were to look at maybe to insert a block or something like that, there's just one block in here of a tree. I've only got a couple of line types and textiles in that as well. What I wanted to do is start with kind of like a very vanilla environment, and I want to show how we could use this tool to help supplement that. Obviously, I'm sure everybody out there is working with a template that they get access to a lot of that content already when they get started. Rather than start with something and then dig to see the things that are new, I'm starting with something that's fairly limited, and then we'll add from there. So the tool itself, where we will access it, the command that we will use to get into it is actually AD Center. We can abbreviate that by using ADC. We can also come up to the top here under Home. And if we look under Palettes, there is an option here that we can select it as well. Or the speed key that I use most often is Control-2. So I'm going to hit Control-2 to bring up the, bring that up on the screen. I've got mine set up to automatically retract there. Now, if we look at the tool, it's kind of like a Windows Explorer for drawing content and the things that we'll use in our drawings. As I come through the list here, just to give you, I want to give you the punchline, like why we care about this before I start digging into the actual tool itself. I'm going to navigate down to my on my desktop here. I've got a couple of drawing files. If I select a drawing, I can expand that drawing, and then I can gain access to a number of components that are inside that file directly from the file I'm in. So I can get access to things like blocks, dimension styles, layers, layouts, line types, tons of information. We can use this to research what might be in other files, what files might be connected to other files. Very, very helpful resource. So a couple things before we start pulling content in is understand a little bit about the interface at first. It starts, we've got a tab up here at the top for folders. This is our folder list. It's basically where we're going to take and navigate from, very similar to Windows Explorer. We've got an area over here on the side. This is where we're going to be kind of mining for information that is applicable to whatever's been selected where we've navigated. We come down beneath that. We've got a preview window that we can access. So the things that we pick, for example, in this drawing, if we were to go down and look at blocks that are available, if I were to select, we'd see a preview window for that. And then if there is any information about a particular file, Jeff had talked about drawing properties a while back when he talked about fields and things like that. That's the type of information that would show up in this window. As you go through and use it, just from the interface standpoint, there are some buttons here that we can start to close maybe the description area. If you don't find the preview very helpful, if you're not navigating for things and you've just got standard stuff that you're going to use, you can close the folder window as well. So we can dial that up as much or as little as what's required for what we're going to do. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to navigate to a folder that has a file in it. So on my desktop, I've got a demo folder. I've got a file here that's 30-minute workout, and it's got some content in it that I would like to get access to. So as an example, if I were to go to blocks, here are some blocks that I would use. I always used to have, it was kind of like the Where's Waldo, the block of the car that was the Lamborghini or something that you could incorporate into a parking lot just to have one unique car of the many that might be there. So this is something that stored in a separate file. I'd go grab that. I'd want to use it in this file. So to gain access to that block, I can click and just drag that particular block into my drawing and release it to let go, and it's automatically inserted. Now, that's kind of like a freestyle. I've inserted it. I'd have to rotate it and work with it from there. If I'd like to do some more with that and be more like a traditional insert, I can double pick on it. If I double pick, then I would get the extra features that I could, specify on screen, rotation scale, and other information. So for example, I could put one over on this side, rotate that to 90 degrees so it was going the other way. Now, I'd like to have access to do some other things as well. Maybe the center line of the road, I'd like to have that look more like a center line. I don't have that line type available in my file. So I could also mine this particular drawing or others for line types that might be available there. In this case, here's a center line type. We'll go ahead and drag that in and let go. With that being available, I can now highlight this line, go to properties, or I could change the layer and assign the center to the layer itself. We'll just do it here because it's quicker. I'm just going to set my line type to be center, and I've got the center line of my road. If the geometry in here is geometry that should be on a particular layer, maybe those layers, once again, I'm sure a lot of folks are thinking, hey, a lot of this is going to be in my file already to begin with. That may or may not necessarily be the case. It may be the case when you start because your template has put it there, but over time, perhaps through a purge or some other operation, some of that content may have been removed. So if I'm missing some layers or other information that I need, rather than recreate them or try and find a way to locate those, I would come into Design Center, navigate to the file that I need. We'll go to Layers. I'm going to grab using standard keys here. I can hold down the Control key to select multiple ones. I can drag a window. I can pick the first one, do Shift, and then we'll grab everything in between. We'll just drag this into our file and let go. We now see that not only have those layers been created, but they've also been created with whatever properties are required or were set up in those layers. So very nice tool. Gives us the ability to bring that information in, the layer and the layer definitions, and not necessarily have to bring in any of the content for those layers as well. So for example, we make this edge of pavement. I'll hit escape here to drop those entities. We'll make this on the layer center line, and for the cars itself, we'll drop those on the layer that those should be on. Okay, so very quickly we can take and drag and select some of that information. Now, we're not limited to just content that we would have in the drawing. We may have some things that are more management or organizational type things like layouts. I want to set up some exhibits or things like that. If I select here, I've already got a layout that's set up for a 22 by 34 inch page or something that we can print. I'll just take and drag that into my file and let go. Not only do I get the layout itself, but I also get the full page setup information as well. So it's not just dragging a block in and going from there. It's also maintaining information about what plotter that's supposed to go to and what pen assignments. Everything that was recorded in that page setup is available in that layout as well. So this is a great thing. It's like, hey, I set up a particular sheet or a particular exhibit, another file. I want to do something similar here. We just drag that layout in and we're ready to go. Maybe I have some other things we'd like to do as well. Maybe a plan and profile and details. I can drag multiple ones in. We'll drag that into this file. If we were to come down and look from a plan and profile perspective, I've already got areas set up for my plan and profile that I would use or whatever the exhibit may be. I can also come over to details. In this case, it was part of a project. We had set up some images to show before and after and a current view of what's going on with a particular site that we are doing some improvements. The idea is this content can be attached and from an image perspective to that layout. And then if I were to go into Xref here, we see that not only did it bring in the layouts themselves, but it also brought in the images and set them up with attachments within this file. So if I had something that maybe I've got scanned details or something like that, you know, I can drag those in and make them part of a particular model or a particular drawing that I'm working with. Okay. As I go through, there's an awful lot of content that I'm taking advantage of from this particular file. When we came in, what this system looks at, let's maybe drop this down. The system looks at, if we go in, it'll come up with home. Home by default is, so if you run this for the first time in Civil 3D, if you've not used it before, this is the folder it's going to be looking in as a sample folder that's going to give you access to content. The sample stuff is for AutoCAD. So actually, if we come down and we look underneath the English US here and expand that to then go to Design Center, there's lots of examples of content we can mine just to practice with. Because we're in Civil 3D, this is the sample information for AutoCAD. If I'd like to see the sample files for Civil 3D, we can scroll up a little bit underneath the AutoCAD 2021. We can see C3D. I would love to tell you that they're under sample, but they're not. They're actually under help. So if we come down under help, we can look under civil tutorials. We can then look under drawings, and then that's where all of the sample drawings are for Civil 3D. All right, more areas that we could go in and select and then start to mine for content and pull other data in as well. Okay, now when I come in, I don't necessarily want to go to a folder and have to start picking these things out. If there's content that is useful to me, for example, this file I've created here, what I can do is I can right click on this and I can add this to favorites. So it becomes a shortcut that if we come up to the top of the screen here and select favorites, I've now got a shortcut that will allow me to go directly to that particular file wherever I am. So whatever resources we have on our network, our local computer, wherever we can access content, I can now create favorites so that I'm not constantly having to navigate. I can just take and click on the shortcut. It immediately takes me to that file and then gives me access to the data and allows me to work with it from there. Okay. Now, just so that you know, when we build these favorites, where do these favorites go? They're actually shortcuts in a folder. If I right click and go to organize favorites, it brings up a dialog. It tells me what folder it's in, and there's the shortcut. All right. If you look, there's the shortcut and the location of where it's at. This is the first instance of where we need to pay attention to where we're using these files from. Where we're pulling the data, because if it's coming from my local machine, it doesn't necessarily make it portable. If I were to give this same shortcut or whatever to Jeff or Dana, it obviously isn't going to find the content because it's going to be trying to find it on my machine. That being said, if it's on a network location, I can set something like this up. Hey, here's this content. I can provide these shortcuts. They can drop them in their folder and then they would have access to these files as well. Okay, so this tool works fantastic, but it is important to know where you're pulling the content from. For you, it will always work fantastic. If you want some of these things to be portable and for some other folks, then you want to make sure that these files are stored in a network location that other people can access. And if they can access it, then we can share those shortcuts and make some of this content more easily available and scalable to other folks. Okay, so let's dial this up a bit of a notch. Let's say that I'm working on a particular file. We'll come back to model space here. I'm working with a particular file, and I want to start harvesting content from this one here, and we look at blocks. All right, I've got a number of blocks here that I can work with. I dragged in some cars that I could work with. I could bring in a north arrow, some other things. Good, certainly not great. I could do more with this. One of the things I can do is I can grab all of these objects, for example, if we're going to be doing, you know, a number of things with these blocks. I can right click on that, and there is an option to go ahead and make a tool palette from these blocks. So we'll create tool palette. I'm going to let that grind that out for just a moment here while it builds the tool palette. Remember, what it's doing is the tool palette is only going to contain links to the blocks inside of this file where that file resides. So once again, a tool palette right now, that's where it's going to be pointing. Why this is going to be important is I could select a vehicle here and drag it in and drop it like we did before, but that wouldn't necessarily make it better than what I had. What would make it better is if it's in this tool palette, I can right click and I can come down to properties. And in properties, not only can I adjust those things from an insertion standpoint, do I want to, you know, assign a scale or a rotation or prompt for those things, but I can also control things like what layer it goes on. So in this particular instance, I'm doing a lot of stuff with trees, or I'm doing a lot of things with power poles or something like that as part of the project. I can quickly make a template and set it up such that as I bring these things in, they're already going in not only in the right scale and the right location, but as I bring them in, they're also going in the right layer and the right configuration that I'd like to have. Okay, so we can go through and we can tweak. I mean, we'll probably do a session just on tool palettes more in the future where we can see other things that can be done with that. If we right click on this and we look at customizing these palettes, by default, it's called new palette. I could right click on that and give it a new name that is more specific for what it is. And I don't want folks to think, well, hey, I'm doing this, and next thing you know, I'm going to have 20 tool palettes of stuff. If this is a temporary thing, you've got an option. I could delete it as well. So once I'm done using it for the purpose that I'm working with it for right now, we can do that. We also have the ability that we can export it. Here's where some of the portability and scalability is. I could export this tool palette, put that out on my network, allow other folks, they could take and import it. Once they import it, they would have a similar palette and then be able to take advantage of any of the customization I've made as well. All right, so using Design Center, we can use that to help supplement some of the other things that, that we're going to work with. Let's take a look at another example here. I'm going to back up. I've got some trees in here. Let's say that I've got a file from somebody else. All right, I've opened up their file and they've used trees or a block to represent the trees in the file, but they didn't use the block that I needed. So what they have, it looks great, but it's not the standard that I need. I'd like to replace that with something else. All right, well, I've got a tree symbol that they were supposed to use. I don't remember exactly where that is in my file, so let's see if we can go search and find it. It's one thing if we know where it is already. Let's find it and then use that to replace what's here. There is some search functionality available in the tool. We'll go ahead and select that. We can search for a number of things. I'm going to go ahead and search for blocks. And then one of the gotchas is I generally make the assumption that whatever folder I was in the Design Center is the folder that will be up here at the top. It actually is remembering the last thing that I was in, which is really the place that I want to go. But you should get in the habit of going to Browse, making sure and navigating to the folder that you need, because it won't necessarily be the folder that was in Design Center when we launch search. What I'm looking for is blocks that have a particular name. We'll say tree. I'll go ahead and click on search now. It found the one for the drawing that I'm in, demo, that's in here right now. It's combing through literally a couple hundred other files. It found a variation in these files here, and it found another one down here. Well, what I can do is I can double click on this. It will automatically bring it back up into Design Center here, and it takes me so that I can see that tree. Well, that's a nice tree. You see it drilled down to that block and that tree. That's a nice one. That wasn't the one I was looking for. So I'm going to go back to search. Let's take a look at that guy. I'm going to lock that window open so it doesn't close up on me. We'll double pick on this one. Yep, that's the tree that I was looking for. Now, if I just try and drag and drop that tree in my file, what do I get? I get the same tree I had before. The reason is the block tree is already defined in my file. Therefore, if I try and insert another one called tree, I get the same thing. If I'd like to redefine that, I can through a right click. You can see that I've got insert and redefine, and I've also got redefine only. We looked at create tool palette before. We could actually drill into that file and edit it within that file. In this case, what we'd like to do is say redefine. I'll click redefine. It updates the status of the blocks that are in my file. So if I get content from somebody else or a file from somebody else that doesn't necessarily meet my standards, I have the ability that I can drag in the things that should be in that file and start to quickly redefine that to what I need. Let's take it the next step. Let's say that I got a file from somebody else and I'd like to use some of that content or some of that information in my file. Let's do this. I'm going to create a, we'll do it this way. We'll say I want to open. I'm going to open a DGN, which is going to convert that DGN into a DWG. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm just going to accept the defaults here. This is what I got from the consultant or whatever the case may be. The name of that file as that opens up is drawing 2. So what I'm going to do, not even going to bother looking at that right now, I want to create some utilities. And I know that the standards that they had set up in that file I'd like to use here. So I'm going to go to demo. One quick way to work with multiple files that are currently open is there's an area here that says open drawings. If I select that, I can see here's the file that I'm in and here's the file that we just created. I'm going to go into that file and look at layers. And I see from the layers, they got some utilities and I want to maintain the same standards that they created. So I'm going to grab this sewer for the line, an 8-inch sewer line, and I'm going to grab this one for the structures if we were to create that. Drag it into my file here. If we were to look in my list, we'll, oops, those are in, roll that up. Look in my list now, there is the layers for that. Let's draw just a polyline here to reference a piece of pipe just to do something quickly. I'm going to grab this and we'll change its properties now to that layer. So we'll say that is the 8-inch sanitary sewer. Okay, now good, but I'd like to do some other things well with line types. You know, we can have custom line types that actually have objects on the line type that will show us direction of flow. I could do that as well. That happens to be in the tools that we were in before. I can go back to favorites. I could find that file from there, but there's also another option here that we can click on a tab for history. History will go through and show us all the files that we've been in currently, maybe the last 20 files. I'll go ahead and click on 3D or 30-minute workouts so we can find it from there if it wasn't part of the favorites. We'll go to line types. I'm going to say that I've got one here for custom proposed sanitary. Let's drag that into our file. If I select my pipe, we'll go ahead and look at properties, and I will set the line type now to that custom sanitary. Okay, so we can start with somebody else's file, drag our content in it to make it match our standards. We could start with our file and drag somebody else's content in, either to leverage what they have or use that to help supplement some of the data that we're working with. What if at the same time I'm looking at that particular drawing here, they've got some blocks and there's not much in this file, but let's say this valve. I could drag this valve in and drop it. And if we look at that valve, let's say that I think that that valve is the greatest thing in the world. What I'd like to do is be able to use that valve as part of, I want to add that to my own content so that I'd be able to use it in the future. I'm going to go back to my folders here. And if you find the 30-minute workout, I'm going to come up here to the top to the desktop. And we're going to come down to demo. Here's my 30-minute workout file. I need to get this into that file, but that file's not open right now. Well, within Design Center, if I select the file, I can right-click on that and I can open it in the application window. So it'll go ahead and it'll automatically navigate and open that file. So I can navigate to files directly from the Design Center as well. Let's once that's open, I can I'm in the 30-minute workout. We'll come into the blocks here. I will drag that into this file, and if we save, now in the future, if we were to look at 30-minute workout and look at blocks, we would see that that content's there as well. So very quickly, you know, hey, this is good. I want to throw this into the pile of stuff that I want to make easy access for myself. I can do that as well. Okay, couple other things just from a wildcard standpoint. If I'm looking for particular content, maybe this demo folder, and let's do this. I happen to be pulling a lot of things from here. I could right-click that, and actually we'll do it from here. I'm going to right-click on demo. Oh, actually, I don't want to do it from favorites. I should be able to, through one of these, I can set that as home. Maybe I can't do it from there, but I could come down and set some of these as home. Not sure why it's not giving me that option, but if we do it from home, I could drill into that as well. From a search standpoint, I'm going to go ahead. Let's say I want to bring a layout in here, and it's an exhibit, and I don't remember what exactly the name was. It was some form of an exhibit, so I really don't know what to search for. What I could do is I could come into here and I could say I want to search for layouts in that same folder, and I'm going to use a wildcard tilde, which means everything but, and I'm going to say layout asterisk, and I'm going to say search now, and it's going to start combing through all those files for any layouts that exist in any of those files in those folders that has a name that isn't just the standard layout 1, layout 2. So instead of coming up with hundreds of those that I'm not going to use anyway, I can say, give me everything that's not that. And as I work my way down, there's my exhibit. I can see there's a cover sheet in here. I could drag one of those in as well, or I could just take this and make it available to me here. All right. Very, very powerful tool. Last thing that I would have you look at is when I'm looking at folders at my desktop, remember this navigation area is designated pretty much for drawing files. So we're not going to see some things that could exist on the desktop like shortcuts or images and that. However, if we come over and we look at that same space here, we come down, we can see shortcuts, we can see things like images and that. The great part about that is I can navigate to those folders using these shortcuts. While they don't show up here, I can navigate in this area. I can also, through the photographs, let's say I'm going to navigate into a folder here for images. Let's say I were to select something here for Pano. I can right-click and we can copy some of that information to our clipboard. And then once I copy that to a clipboard, I could paste that into PowerPoint or Word or something else. So if I was making an exhibit or something like that, I would be able to copy and paste content, whether it be drawing information, whether it be images, anything that's valid that would show up in my mining area here for content, I would be able to do that as well. Okay, so with that said, that's pretty much the stuff that I wanted to show for the tool. I would switch back to Jeff, but basically it would just be the my summary slide of what it was we covered and then questions. So rather than just taking the time to bring that up on the screen with the time we have left, I'll ask, do we have any questions that remained outstanding at this point?
Not at this point.
Got them all. Okay, fantastic. Well then, once again, thank you very much for your time and attention. We appreciate you guys investing some of your time with us today. And we look forward to having you guys attend a session like this in the future. Once again, if you have any questions over anything we covered, you'd like to talk to any of us one-on-one, please feel free to reach out to us. As we said, we always appreciate the opportunity to interact with some of the users and some of the people that are using our tools. So thanks, and have a great rest of the day. See ya.